So pray, brethren, that I may be within the measure. And by telling you pray, means it's your responsibility. If I get too long, it's your fault. Okay? Christ takes his disciples to the retreat. The purpose of the retreat is to create new mindset, new way of thinking. For that reason, it always starts by taking people out of their usual setting, in some completely new setting, when you may be open to start to think in new way. And then to bring the new way of thinking, Christ first starts with challenging the way how we think. He asks his disciples, okay guys, what do people think, who am I? So he basically asked them, do you see which stupidities people think about me? And for us, what it means, you cannot come to the truth about Christ by questioning public opinion. What will be public opinion about Christ? Well, everybody thinks Christ is exactly as I want him to be. I guess if you ask Hitler would quote you passages of the Bible which would prove that Christ is Nazi. If you speak with liberal, they will prove you that Christ is a liberal, and so on and so on. Doesn't matter. People always see Christ in my image. Things should be opposite. Christ is true man, and we should be shaped in his image. And that's the lead to the second question, where Christ asked his disciples, what do you think, who am I? That question is not just for disciples 2,000 years ago, it's also for us today. Struggling with this question to answer who is that can lead you to relationship with living Christ. That's what is important. Speaking about that question, I have to point out that how strange is that question. We read the gospel and we just smooth over it. We don't realize how strange is the question. There is no other religion where the founder will ask his disciples, what do you think, who am I? Buddha would never come, dear Buddhists, what do you think, who am I? It would not make sense in the Buddhism. He would ask them, did you learn what I was teaching you? Did you meditate enough? Muhammad would never ask his followers, what do you think, who am I? Because that's not what's important in Islam. He would ask them, did you learn all about what I told you? Did you follow other commandments? But he would not ask them, who am I? On the contrary, Christianity absolutely doesn't make sense until we don't answer that question. Christianity is based, not so much based on teaching of Jesus Christ, but more on the person of Jesus Christ, on our relationship with that person. For example, when Christ says, if you love your mother and father, even your own life more than me, you are not worthy of me. You cannot understand these words until you don't understand who Christ is. Or if you don't know that Christ is God, and God is speaking to you when he says these words, you will not understand these words properly. Christianity's starting point is to know that Christ is God. That's essential. Everything changes after that. But how can we know that Christ is God? You cannot learn that Christ is God in the library. You may read the sentence, Christ is God. You may say, but you will learn that here, when you meet Christ. The whole thing about what we are doing here in the church is not to do something to please God. God doesn't need this. God doesn't need you here in the church. He doesn't need anything. We need it. What happens here, by listening the Word of God, by participating in liturgy, we learn to recognize the presence of God in our life. We learn to recognize His way of acting in our life. We learn to be our eyes open to see Christ present in everything what we do. Then, once we know Christ, we can see Him in our whole life. Then everything starts to have sense. Now, after we have considered the question, when Christ asked his disciples, what do you think, who am I? We have to look on the answer. Look on the disciples. They are silent, most of them. It's not easy. Even if they know the answer, they were at that point, have been with Christ almost 3 years. And they know Christ better than anybody else. They know Christ quite well. They have listened all his teaching. They have seen all the miracles. They know him. And yet it's not easy to put in the words what I have learned about him, what I know about him, the person whom they know. Only Peter who has this beautiful ability to speak without thinking, he blurts out what the Father tells him. He blurts out, "You are Christ, Son of the living God." Peter answered well, exactly because he was not thinking. And don't say, "Father told us thinking is wrong." I told you, from the very beginning of the gospel, the whole purpose is to bring us to think as Christ. Okay? Christ brings us to retreat. He brings us to learn to think in different way, not in the way of this world. As long as Peter doesn't rely on his usual way of thinking, he will get the right answer. Another example of that was Peter was in the boat, you remember? And Jesus Christ was walking on the water. He comes near the boat and they get scared. He says, "Don't be scared, it is I." Peter says, again without thinking, he says, "If it is you, tell me to go out of the boat and walk on the water." And Jesus calls him. And Peter walks, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 steps. We don't know how many steps. He walks several steps. How long does he walk? Until he doesn't start thinking. But what is the difference? Here, when he spoke with Jesus Christ, when he answered Christ, Christ told him, "You could give the right answer because you didn't get this answer through your brain. No, because you were able to listen to my Father in heaven." When he came out of the boat, happened the same, but he tuned to different wavelength, not to the wavelength of the Father. He tuned to the wavelength of fear. And he looked at himself, he looked on the wind and says, "No, it's not possible, I cannot walk." Boom. Doesn't matter that he actually walked. The moment he says, "I cannot walk," he sinks. That's why I was always speaking against fear. I probably have wrote 30 letters against fear. Because once we tune to the wavelength of fear, we don't hear God. Same thing happened immediately after this dialogue we have here. Jesus Christ tells them, "What do you think, who am I?" Peter says, "You are Christ, Son of the living God." Jesus tells him, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." What happened after this dialogue? Jesus could see, they figure out I am Son of God. We are going to Jerusalem. They think I will be a king. He could see they already took their smartphones out and ordered the furniture from IKEA to get furniture for their big office. He says, no, I have to pop that bubble. So he told them, "Listen guys, we come to Jerusalem, what is going to happen? They are going to arrest me, torture me and kill me." What did Peter say at that moment? He said, "Great idea?" No. He said same thing what we would say. "This should not happen to you." And again, why? Because what was Jesus' answer at that point? He said, "Go away from me, Satan." Just a moment ago, he appointed Peter to be first pope because he was able to listen to his Father. And boom, 10 minutes later, Jesus Christ calls Peter Satan. Why? Because he speaks what Satan would say. He speaks in the name of Satan because he tuned on the wavelength of fear, and now he doesn't listen Father from heaven, he listens. And that's the point. If we are listening fear, we are under influence of somebody else. So it's not matter that we don't think. We have to be free from fear, otherwise we will not be free from influence from below. Let's go back to the dialogue between Peter and Jesus. Jesus says, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." Peter, the word Peter comes from Greek Petros, and normally in English would be translated Rocky. That would sound strange because of the movie. I want that you have clarity that the word Petros is connected with rock and stone. So the word petroleum comes from two words, Petros and oleum, oil from the rock, or being petrified, being turned into a stone. He tells him, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." What is the rock on which he builds the church? Peter's ability to listen to the Father. That he, at least occasionally, he's able not to listen his thinking, his desire, he is able to listen to the Father. For that reason, he will be the first pope. Now about the church. Very important thing. I don't know how to emphasize it more. It is, Christ says, "I will build my church." Means, I don't know if I need to translate it in English, means church is not created by man's desire, man's effort. I'm always surprised when some Protestant church says that they are Church of Christ, and they build it 1500 years after Christ died. Hello? Only one church was founded by Christ. Christ says, "You are rock, on this rock I will build my church." And this church is not like Christ goes buy a piece of land and build a golf club or build a church, whatever. Golf club is place where everybody who likes golf comes. Church is everybody who likes Jesus comes. It's not like that. The word church in Greek, and I'm speaking today several times as Greek, I'm not expert in Greek. I don't want anybody to think like that. The word church in Greek is ecclesia, which comes from two words, which means to be called out. You are here in the church because you are called out of the world. That implies you are supposed to be different than the world. If you are called out of the world, you are not supposed to be like the world. That's implied when Jesus Christ says to his disciples, he says, love your enemies. If you only love those who love you, what are you doing different than all the pagans? He implies that we have to be different, and difference is the way how we love. So finally, the church is the place where we learn to love. And for that reason, I very much dislike when somebody addresses the people in church, my friends. Because you choose your friends. Sir, I don't like you, so I will sit there. If I don't like somebody, I separate myself from that person. But if we are brothers and sisters, we are put together even if we don't like each other. You probably many of you have brothers and sisters which are difficult to bear. And you still have to be with them, not because they are likable, not because you would choose ever to be with them, but because you have same father and same mother. As members of the church, we have same Father in heaven. We as members of the church, we have same Mother in heaven. And not because we like the other person, but because we share the same Father, we belong to the same family, we have to learn to love each other. Make sense? And then, as we learn to love each other, we try to do it with our own efforts. We are told to love each other, and we reduce this love to something what we can do. We reduce this love to the kindness. Oh, when I heard that one catechist saying to the children, what it means to love each other, it means to be kind to each other. Well, it's not opposite of love, but I still wanted to pull my hair out. You see, I did some. It is reducing love to something what we can do, instead of allowing Christ to grow His love in us. What I want to say, how our kindness look like. Oh, you have nice haircut, and usually it doesn't go much farther than that, and so on. Nothing wrong with these things, but that's not love. Love means to love somebody who is so annoying that you want to bang your head on the wall, and you still love him. Not because of your natural inclination, but because God is leading you to love him. To love somebody who always repeats the same thing, and when you see that person, you already start to get anxious. Now again, he's going to tell me the same story, I cannot listen it again for 50th time. And you love him. Or he has bad breath, and you love him, not because of his breath, in spite of his breath. Or he's kind of strange guy, always coming with strange hair, open zipper, or I don't know what. And you love him, not because of your natural inclination, because Christ can give you strength to love him, can break down all the barriers. Communion in the church is not formed by our efforts trying to be close to each other, by being united with Christ. Communion in the church is like bicycle wheel, where all the spikes are connected to the center. And bicycle wheel is held together when all the spikes are in the center, not by one spike connecting to another. Same is in the church. As long as each one of us is united with Christ, through Christ, we will have union with others. For that reason also it's very important. You cannot here in the big parish, you cannot experience that Christ can break your distaste for one person in the parish. Why? Because if you have distaste for that person, you will simply avoid him so easily. It's quite important to experience that Christ can create communion, to be in some smaller group in the parish. In the moment we have, I think, 1 or 2 smaller groups. We can create different kinds of groups. You say, I like Neocatechumenal Way because that helped me, you understand? But if somebody wants something else, say, I heard about that group, I want that. We may try. Because only in the smaller group, when you are pressed with the people which normally you would never be with, then you will experience that Christ can create communion beyond your expectation. And let me tell you more about the communion. What is experience of heaven? I heard that question answered quite a few times. Did you ever experience heaven here on earth? And what was that experience? Did you ever experience hell here on earth? And what was that experience? Most of the time that I heard that question answered was in the sense, yes, I have experienced hell here on earth when I didn't speak with my father for 30 years. Can you relate to that? Can you see that this might be hell? Even you don't speak with your father, so you don't fight with him. You experience hell, correct? I experienced hell here on earth when I could not forgive my brother. Same. And opposite, yes, I have experienced heaven here on earth when God helped me to ask my father for the forgiveness. Such relief. Heaven. Yes, I have experienced heaven here on earth when God helped me to reconcile with my brother, and so on and so on. So, experience of heaven is experience of communion. Experience of hell is experience of breaking communion, being alone. Do you believe that? I don't know. Is that too high mysticism? No, I think you can relate to that. This is the point. We are here in church to experience that Christ can create communion with the people we would never be in the communion. Then we will believe in the communion of heaven. Second thing, keep eyes on the goal. Goal is the heaven. The communion here in the church helps us to, once you experience communion here, help us to believe in the communion of heaven. And this will lead us more and more to keep eyes on the goal. If you didn't eat anything for 10 days, you are hungry, you would eat whatever, you would eat rat, whatever you see, you are able to eat at that point. Nobody of us can imagine hunger if you didn't eat anything for 10 days. And then, after being so hungry, you see the beautiful sandwich in the garbage bin. You never ate from the garbage bin, but in that case you would be ready. It's sandwich exactly as you like. In my case, ham and cheese, little bit of mayonnaise, that would be perfect. It's true, on one side the sandwich is eaten by the rat. You can clean up a bit rat fur and eat it. Probably you would do. But in one occasion you would not eat that sandwich. Doesn't matter how hungry you are. If at that moment you know, I'm going right now to the banquet. Going to heaven means going to heavenly banquet. Are you going to eat from the garbage here on earth to try to satisfy your needs with the things which cannot satisfy you? If you have eyes on the happiness, on the joy which God has prepared for you, it's not matter when we speak about heaven, it's not matter about a spy in the sky. It's true happiness. And the more this happiness becomes something real for you, the more all the happiness which is offered here on earth will be distasteful and unpleasing and unsatisfying. That's the idea, to have the clarity of the happiness, of the joy which God has prepared for us. Let us stand and profess our faith.